Oh, everybody mute mics. Well, hello, and thank you so much for being with us today. I am Carol Jenkins, the president and CEO of the ERA Coalition and the Fund for Women's Equality, sister organizations with 115 organizations across the country working to attach the Equal Rights Amendment to the Constitution so that there will be no opportunity to discriminate based on account of sex. So welcome to day 4 of the election of 2020. I have a couple of notes. We are recording the session. Please mute yourselves. There will be time for questions at the end of the program, but we do want to have our panelists be able to give their presentations without interruption. This was a vital election for us working in equality. And this is where we are now with the Equal Rights Amendment. As you know, Congress passed the ERA back in 1972. Virginia, the 38th required state that we needed, ratified this year. And also the House of Representatives removed the time limit on the ERA this year. It's in the introduction where we believe it does not affect the amendment itself. But what we do need now is for the Senate to also remove the time limit. And to that point, we are delighted that Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland, the lead sponsor with Senator Lisa Murkowski of SJ Res 6, the Senate bill to remove the time limit, is with us. Senator Cardin has represented the people of Maryland in the US Senate since 2006, and during his long career, he's been a champion for civil and human rights, healthcare, and we are so happy to say the Equal Rights Amendment. Senator Cardin, thanks so much for being with us. If you could unmute yourself, Senator.
Right, thank you.
You're allowed to unmute.
Thank
you for being with us.
Carol, first of all, thank you for your extraordinary leadership on this issue. And thank you for getting us together so soon after the elections, because we know there's new opportunities as a result of this election. Under President Biden, we'll have a different leadership in the White House. It will focus on the issues that are important to the American people. And one of those issues that's clearly important to the American people is the Equal Rights Amendment. Every time we do any types of surveys on it, an overwhelming majority of Americans, first of all, don't realize we haven't ratified it yet, but secondly, strongly support the Equal Rights Amendment being included in our Constitution. And particularly this year, as we've lost Justice Ginsburg, the true iconic champion of women's rights, we now need to follow her advice and her wish. And her wish was that if we could get one additional amendment to the Constitution, it was her hope that the Equal Rights Amendment would be that amendment. And she talked about her granddaughters being able to pick up the Constitution and seeing in our basic document that protection. What is really shocking, and I think this will be a point for President Biden, there hasn't been a Constitution written since the end of World War II that does not include in a democratic state the Equal Rights Amendment. So this is the time for us to strategize on how to get this done. It is very important. It's a different standard used in judging whether we're meeting our gender equity issues, the strict scrutiny standard, which makes a big difference when we talk about the economic issues of our time and that affect gender discrimination, or healthcare issues that have gender discrimination. The strict scrutiny standard is critically important for us to have, and that's protected if we can get the Equal Rights Amendment passed. Carol, you've already pointed out the fact that the Equal Rights Amendment actually started in 1923, the movement to amend the Constitution for the Equal Rights Amendment. But it was 1972 that Congress passed the constitutional amendment. It extended the time in 1979 to 1982. But there is no limits in the Constitution on the time limits for a constitutional ratification. And we do have 38 states that have now ratified the required number. All we need now is for Congress to allow those states' ratifications to take effect by removing the time limit. The House did the right thing in February. Congratulations to the House of Representatives. They passed that resolution in February of this year. The Senate resolution, which I am the sponsor of, but has 48 of my colleagues that are co-sponsors, including my principal co-sponsor, Lisa Murkowski. This is a bipartisan effort in order to get this done. Now is the time to strategize how we can get it done in this Congress, how we can get the extension done and at long last recognize Justice Ginsburg's legacy by including the Equal Rights Amendment in the Constitution, and recognize the fact that it is needed, as the late Justice Scalia said, there's nothing in the Constitution that requires discrimination against women, but there's nothing in it to protect it. We can change that by the passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, and your coalition, your group, has really got us together to focus on what strategy can get us to the finish line. I'm really proud to be part of your team, and I thank you for getting organized so early in this effort and recognize that we need to strategize together on how to make this happen. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of attention in the next 2 months in the state of Georgia and the control of the United States Senate. We'll wait to see what happens in that matter. But one thing is clear to me. This is an issue that is incredibly important to the American people, all Americans, but particularly women who have made such a difference in the vote counts in our states and our nation. So this is an issue I think we have people's attention. Let's figure out a winning strategy to get to the finish line in 2021. Thank you.
Terrific. And I see you're hopeful for 2021, as are we, and we stand with you to do whatever we can to make that happen. And I know you have other commitments, Senator. We thank you so much for taking the time, for being with you. And we'll be in your office next week. Only kidding. But
I'm looking forward to when we can have these meetings in person. I'm also looking forward to, at long last, getting the Equal Rights Amendment in the Constitution. Thank you, Carol.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Senator Cardin. And our next speaker is Michelle Goodwin, who is a distinguished law professor at the University of California, Irvine, an acclaimed bioethicist and a constitutional law scholar. She is host of On the Issues with Michelle Goodwin. That's a podcast sponsored by Ms. Magazine, our dear friends and colleagues. And she serves on the executive committee of the ACLU. Michelle, thank you so much for being with us today.
It is a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so very much for having me. So how I want to contribute to our conversation is that we have a new justice on the Supreme Court, Amy Coney Barrett. She replaces Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And it's important that we take a pause on that. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a stalwart, indefatigable leader on the Supreme Court. And she represented something that has become increasingly rare on the court, in that prior to her appointment on the court, she had served at the ACLU as the head of its Women's Rights Project. And this is saying so much. Her earliest appointment came from President Jimmy Carter, who really broke ground with 6 federal circuit courts of appeal, nominating the women to 6 circuit courts of appeal. And that's really quite extraordinary. And she actually wasn't the first woman that he placed on the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, which says so much about who Jimmy Carter was. And there's more that could be said about that. We could do a special show just about what that kind of pioneering, thoughtful effort was for the president at that time. But I want to talk briefly about what this means now that Justice Amy Coney Barrett will serve on and is serving on the United States Supreme Court. She was nominated by President Donald Trump, confirmed by the Senate, and then went through 2 oaths of office by Justice Clarence Thomas and the Chief Justice of the court himself. And people wonder what her jurisprudence will be. And one has to be cautious in predicting exactly how a justice will articulate him or herself on the court. But Justice Amy Coney Barrett has already given us a head start with that, in that when she had her White House debut with President Donald Trump, she made it very clear that she would fashion herself in the likeness of Antonin Scalia, a departed Supreme Court justice who fashioned himself as the most conservative justice to serve on the court during the time in which he was alive and serving on the court, even to the right of Justice Clarence Thomas. So what does that mean across a series of issues? Well, she's articulated that she will be a textualist and originalist, and it's worth critiquing just what that means. It's actually something new. It's a creation. There is nothing in an older record of textualist and originalist, but something that emerged during the time in which Bork was being considered for the Supreme Court. Many people say that it's really outcome determinative kind of thinking, which is that it gives an opportunity for individuals who are on the court who don't want to think about an evolved constitution as including the rights of people of color, of women, of LGBTQ persons, to just say, well, I'm an originalist. And as an originalist, I interpret the Constitution according to its original writings and meanings. Of course, if you think about the Constitution in that way, then you think that women have no access to enfranchisement and the voting right. Then you'd see Black people and Indigenous people and all people of color as having no access to the voting right. It would only be propertied white men. So you could see the kinds of problems with thinking about the Constitution within a originalist or a textualist kind of frame. But given that, what many people are worried about is where Amy Coney Barrett would be on reproductive health rights and justice. Well, again, her record, both in terms of her personal articulations and her professional articulations, is that she is not a justice who would likely support reproductive health care and rights. The bigger concern is not just with regard to abortion and upholding Roe and Planned Parenthood v. Casey, but even on matters like contraception, which can easily be lost in the conversation of thinking about abortion. The Supreme Court in Burwell v. Hobby Lobby made very clear that contraceptive access is also on the line, particularly when it's either companies or corporations want to view contraception as being inconsistent and incompatible with their religious views. So something to think about there. But it's important to think even in the broader context about what her record could mean. Justice Scalia was also against the Affordable Care Act. Arguments for the Affordable Care Act are coming before the Supreme Court just next week. Justice Roberts was a vote with the liberals to support it. But now, even if Justice Roberts sides with the liberals, that makes only a 4, and you can't call him a liberal, right? But then that's still 5-4. And there are other areas to think about as I quickly wrap up here that include criminal justice as being on the line. She supports the death penalty, it appears. Gun rights, she is certainly not for gun control, it appears. And so many other issues. And right now we're in the middle of an election. And it's worth considering where she will be on voting rights. And if she follows the record of Justice Scalia, then she may not be a friend for those who are concerned about voter suppression. So much to be concerned about and much more that we'll see. Let me close with the following, which is that of the nominations and confirmations through this president, there were more to the federal bench than any other president, save George Washington. Of the more than 50 persons who were nominated by Donald Trump and then confirmed to the federal appeals court, not one was Black. Only one was Latino. So much for us to be concerned about, not just at the Supreme Court level, but also at the federal courts of appeals. And the final thing that I'll say is that the integrity of the federal bench is at issue in these times because there's concern about the court becoming partisan. The federal bench is supposed to be one where we don't worry about partisanship. There may be differences in ideology, but it's not a legislative branch of government. There's a deep concern over recent years that people who've come onto the federal courts are people who see themselves as molded in the president, not necessarily molded according to an ideology, but as people who will pivot for Trump. It's a problem, something that we should address, and even the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has raised it as a concern and has said there's no such thing as Trump judges, as Obama judges, or Bush judges. That all remains to be seen. And thank you very much for having me. And I am really, really pleased to be with you today.
Thank you so much. We definitely want to follow up. I know that you have a class, so we're all going to be signing up for your courses. You know, we learned so much in 10 minutes here. We thank you so much. And on the Issues podcast, Ms. Magazine, it's fabulous. So thank you so much, Michelle
Thank
Goodwood,
you.
for being with us. Thank you. And our next guest is our boss, so to speak, the chair of the ERA Coalition, Kimberly Peeler Allen. As many of you may know, she is the co-founder of Higher Heights, the national organization building the political power and leadership of Black women, as they say, from the voting booth to elected office. And in 2018, Kimberly served as the co-executive director of New York Attorney General Letitia James's Transition Committee. She also serves as co-chair of the Higher Heights for America PAC, is a board director of NARAL, Pro-Choice America Foundation, and she is also currently a visiting practitioner at the Center for American Women in Politics at Rutgers University. Thanks so much, Kimberly, boss, for being with us today.
It is a partnership, Carol. It is
Oh, that's right.
absolutely a partnership.
That's her style of management. It's a partnership. We're great to have you with us, Kimberly.
It is a pleasure to be with all of you on this. I have had to count on my fingers this fourth Tuesday, because it is definitely, it feels like this is the longest election day known to man. This has been a really long election cycle, but great to talk through kind of where we are at this very moment. I'm actually sitting on my phone, and the Associated Press, every time they call a race, they tweet something out. So I'm constantly looking to see if anything has changed. And we know that things are changing very quickly all across the country. But just to give kind of a snapshot of where we are, what the landscape looks like, and what that means for our work in actually codifying the Equal Rights Amendment into the Constitution and implementing it moving forward. So this is where we are. And by the time we get off the phone, we may be in a different landscape. We'll see. But I think for the purposes of our focus, we know that the White House is definitely in play, and the vote leads in Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Nevada, and Arizona are definitely by a hair in many of these states, and hopefully will be all rectified and fully counted, and every vote will be counted in this election, and we'll know hopefully by the end of the day today who has reached 270 electoral college votes. But regardless of what happens at the top of the ticket, we know that the bulk of our work will be done in the U.S. Senate. We are so thrilled to have the continuous and unwavering support of Senator Cardin in pushing for the lifting of the time limit in SJ Res 6, and we know that things are in the balance. Looking at the Senate races right now that have yet to be called, there are 4. Alaska has about 56% of the vote has been tabulated. We fully expect that will probably go to the Republican. The North Carolina Senate seat, Cal Cunningham is down by about 100,000 votes right now, and I think there's still about 90% of the votes to be counted. So we'll see how that plays out. But it is, although pundits are anticipating that will remain with Thom Tillis, and then as Senator Cardin mentioned, the 2 races in Georgia, and the likelihood that they will both go to a runoff in January is very high. And if the Democrats do take those 2 seats, the split in the chamber will be 50-50, with assuming that if the Biden-Harris ticket wins, the Vice President Harris will be the deciding factor, and will throw the majority of the chamber to the Democrats, which will mean instead of facing Lindsey Graham as chair of the Judiciary Committee, we will have Dianne Feinstein, which is, I think, a welcome change of scenery, to say the least. Senator Feinstein has been a longtime supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. She has studied very carefully over the years the lifting the timeline, and it has joined Senator Cardin in supporting that bill. And because she has studied it so closely, we know that she really understands it, and she doesn't make these decisions lightly. So we know that we have a very strong ally in Senator Feinstein in getting it out of the Senate and then into the full chamber, and hopefully moving forward for the vote. So looking at the House, it's been kind of back and forth. We know that the Democrats have lost a bit of their majority. They are still favored to hold the majority. But one thing that is actually very interesting is that in the incoming Congress will be yet another record-breaking Congress in terms of the number of women elected to the chamber. As of right now, there are still several races that have yet to be called, but we are looking at a historic 131 women who will be serving in Congress, which is up from the incoming class of 2019 of 127 women. So we are inching forward in terms of parity. We saw definite pickups, increase in the number of Republican women, which I think is interesting and can lead to some great conversations. And women we've seen lead differently. We are, come together more often than not. So looking forward to having those conversations around equality and being able to really continue to move forward, because as you all know, though we were able to pass the House Jackie Spears bill that then turned into SJ Res 6, we were able to pass it through the House in the 117th Congress without a hitch. We do have to go back because it did not pass the Senate. We do have to go back and start over. So would love to have bipartisan support of that incoming bill. So going into the states and the state elections and the state legislative chambers, we are still definitely championing a 50 state strategy because the Equal Rights Amendment is something that will benefit all Americans, and to be able to have full support and engagement from every state in this union is critically important, I think, to really persuading the hearts and minds of the American people about why equality needs to be stated explicitly in the Constitution. So we, as of now, and like I said, particularly as these last states are continuing to count their votes, and it's coming down to absentee ballots and ballots that are coming in the mail over the next probably 24 hours, I think, for the most part. Things may shift slightly, but it is anticipated that the Arizona State House, they haven't been called, and many of those races are too close to call. But there is a possibility that we could switch control there, which is very exciting. But the rest of the unratified states, Arkansas, Georgia, Oklahoma, Missouri, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Utah, will all remain in Republican control. So I think we have a lot of work to do not just in possibly changing seats, but working with those legislatures. I know there are coalition partners on this call now who have never waned in their work in working with state legislators to have those states ratify the ERA, so that we end up with 39, 40, 41 or more states, hopefully all the way up to 50. But there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I will pause there because I think that was a great win. And actually somebody just put in the chat that Arizona was called. That's all I could see. Oh, yes, Arizona, the US Senate seat was called for Mark Kelly, which is very exciting, but the state legislature is still up for grabs. So we're waiting to see what those state Senate seats, how those fall. So yeah, the work continues. I think we've made tremendous progress because of the work of all of you, and we look forward to rolling up our sleeves and strategizing over the next few weeks, and then hitting the ground running when the state legislatures and Congress go into session in January.
Great, great. Thank you, Kimberly. I love the sound of that 50-state strategy, right? One of our initiatives, because every state should ratify the ERA as far as we're concerned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce Deborah Messing, who is best known for her Emmy Award-winning role as Grace Adler on NBC's Emmy-winning Will and Grace. Love that show. As an HIV/AIDS activist, she's traveled extensively in Africa and testified before the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee on Africa and Global Health, that has been honored for her extensive LGBTQ work, is a founding member of the I Am a Voter organization and effort, and is now a supporter of the Equal Rights Amendment. We've had this conversation. We have a mutual friend, the great Kathy Najimy, and when you guys were in Pennsylvania, right? Knocking on doors, and Kathy kept texting saying, "This is amazing. I want to do this every single day of my life." Thanks so much, Deborah Messing, for being with us.
Thank you so much, Carol. I'm so honored to be included today. Carol asked me to speak a little bit about my advocacy and activism. For a little background, I started working for campaigns in 2004 with Al Gore. In 2016, I was a surrogate for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. Donald Trump disgusted me, and I was committed to helping Hillary beat him. They sent me all over Ohio, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, and New York State. Hillary and I were together in Philly the night before the election, celebrating the end of a contentious campaign and her presumed breaking of the proverbial glass ceiling as the first woman president of the United States. I think it's fair to say that her loss was calamitous. I fell into despair and ended up in a grief circle with 5 women, including our friends Kathy Najimy and Gloria Steinem. We talked about the misogyny that was ultimately insurmountable and the horror that the victor was a serial sexual assaulter who used his hatred for marginalized people as his currency. I was horrified and traumatized, and I realized I had to convert my anguish into incitement. For my mental health, I had to take action. Hillary lost by 77,000 votes spread out of 3 states. 100 million registered Americans did not vote. 70% of young people did not vote. That was infuriating. As Carol mentioned, my friend Mandana Dayani and I, in a room full of badass women, created the nonpartisan voter registration and civil engagement organization, I'm a Voter. The intent was to rebrand voting, making it cool, an identity, something young people would aspire to. We believe that if we vote, we win. African American women have always been the reason Democrats and progressives win. They always show up. White women failed Hillary, and the diverse coalition of people of color were underrepresented in the voting body. We made it our mission through campaigns with influencers and athletes, brand partnerships, social media drives to register as many people as possible and get their commitment to show up. Young people came out in droves in 2020. Without Gen Z, we would not have a close contest right now. We're proud of what we were able to accomplish, along with the efforts of many nonprofits, and we're going to continue in our efforts to change the culture around voting. We want numbers so big that it overwhelms all efforts at voter suppression and gerrymandering. Hashtag too big to rig. As we worked on building I Am a Voter, I watched Donald Trump codify racism, putting children in cages while calling white supremacists very fine people. And it was sickening. His xenophobia led to barring people from Muslim countries from entering the US. He stripped funding for HIV research and interventions, which was particularly painful because I have been traveling to sub-Saharan Africa as PSI's global ambassador for HIV/AIDS for 12 years, and I knew that lives would be lost and progress would be stalled as a result. Trump mocked people with disabilities, degraded people from native nations, and never missed an opportunity to insult, dismiss, belittle, and objectify women. He could not hide his contempt. He assaulted our psyche every day in different ways, and there seemed to be an unimaginable affront every week. He flaunted his corruption, spoke out loud his obstructive intentions, and systematically dismantled our institutions, and he was never held to account. And that drove me crazy. I couldn't deal. My need for justice remains unsatisfied. I mean, I want him in jail. But before that could happen, he had to lose re-election. And then came Joe. I campaigned in a bus around Pennsylvania in 2008 and met Joe for the first time in Philly the night before the election that would make him vice president. Since then, my dear friend Mariska Hargitay created the Joyful Heart Foundation for survivors of sexual assault and domestic abuse. Mariska discovered there was a backlog of untested rape kits all over the country. Police departments didn't prioritize testing rape kits, and they languished in warehouses for years. Therefore, serial rapists walked free and justice was denied to thousands of survivors. Joe Biden wanted to change that. He invited her to DC and they flew around the country together, and he saw for himself the crisis. And then he pledged $79 million to eliminate the rape kit backlog. Joe also created the White House Sexual Assault Task Force to protect students on college campuses from rape. He walks the walk, and candidate Joe Biden announced an extensive plan focusing on women. It includes supporting women's small businesses, permanent paid sick leave, equal pay, affordable childcare, free preschool, and debt-free public college. He would renew the Violence Against Women Act, protect a woman's right to choose, and would support the ratification of the ERA. So I was all in with Joe to fire Donald Trump. And then COVID. So campaigning was moved online, and I became a Twitter warrior. DM Twitter rooms were created based on issues: immigration, LGBTQ, Amy Coney Barrett, gun safety, healthcare, Time's Up, Black Lives Matter, impeachment, Biden. And influencers would coordinate messaging and post at designated times to flood the social media and get our hashtags trending. We had combined 300 million Twitter followers. I learned that a community could be created on a screen, and using our collective written voices was powerful. So every day we were pushing back against the assaults and indecency of Donald Trump's administration, essentially protesting, with the goal being to change hearts and minds, to try to educate Fox News watchers who were fed a daily diet of lies and disinformation, to spread compassion and empathy. We knew that our country could not withstand another 4 years. And the specter of Roe being overturned, healthcare being stripped in the middle of a pandemic that was not being combated, the stripping of protections to our water and air, and the growing instances of natural disasters, the escalation and tacit approval of police brutality, and the highest incident of racial violence in decades made it clear that it was indeed the most consequential election of our lives. I went down to Pennsylvania to campaign for Joe and Kamala twice in the last 3 weeks. Kathy came along on the last trip, which was on Halloween. We knocked on doors, gave pep talks to volunteers at the election centers, did interviews with local papers, gave speeches in parks with local congressional candidates, and it was heaven. After months of COVID quarantining, it was a shot of life force to talk to people instead of typing. The energy around the election was electric. People ran to us out of their homes to share why they were voting for Joe and Kamala. And I have never seen anything like it before. And our attempts to flip Trump voters were amusing. We drove back home tired, with smiles on our faces, feeling gratified and comforted that we were fighting for change, for a safer, saner, more equitable, and humane country. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will win the election today, and that gives me great hope. I believe they are the right team for this moment in our country's history. I'm giddy with anticipation for that moment when we can celebrate Kamala, the first woman and woman of color to be elected Vice President of the United States. And I can't wait until they pass, at long last, the Equal Rights Amendment. Its time has come. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your support, for being here. We see you calling out to us in the media. We're so thrilled that we have you as a part of our team and for your wonderful presentation and your passion. Thanks so much. At this point, would like to throw it to, as many of you in our coalition know, Bettina Hager, who is our DC Director and Director of Outreach. And Bettina, take it away.
Oh, well, thank you, Carol. And I want to say thank you to everyone who's tuning into our election debrief. As we've been saying over the past few months, the fate of the ERA will be determined at the ballot box. And we in our lead and member orgs made it a priority to work to elect equality in 2020. At the ERA Coalition, we launched a website, a Elect Equality website, which I want to just put up so everyone can see. It's an interactive tool that people can use to check and see if their candidate, or they could to see if their candidate was pro-equality. We are now switching this to show the results of the election so people can see who is coming into office and whether they are pro-equality. Since Mark Kelly was called out, I thought I'd put up Arizona so everyone could see that he is in fact pro-equality, and we are pleased to be adding a pro-equality senator to the to our mix. We are going to be keeping this site up, and we hope that it is going to be helpful for people as we begin to strategize for the 117th congressional session, because we need to start our strategy now. And this tool, we hope, will help us get there. We also hope that you will check it out at eracoalition.org/electequality. So now I want to shift to introduce some of our lead org members who did amazing work on the ground and spent countless hours making sure that voters were aware that it was so important to elect equality in 2020. I'm first pleased to introduce Katie Hornung to talk about the work Vote Equality US did this election cycle. Katie Hornung is the co-founder and director of Vote Equality US, a nationwide nonpartisan grassroots effort to ensure the 28th Amendment, the Equal Rights Amendment, is added to the US Constitution. Prior to running Vote Equality US, she ran VA Ratify ERA, Virginia's statewide campaign that achieved Virginia's ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment in January 2020, and technically fulfilled everything to make the ERA the 28th Amendment, which is, I know, what you're calling it. So Katie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bettina. Yes, we no longer use ERA. We have a number, not just a name. We go with the 28th Amendment. Thanks for giving me a couple minutes to highlight some of the work that our teams did on the ground. We had the notorious RVG. That stands for the Ruthless Vote Getter. And the notorious RVG is a branded RV that we took down to North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And we basically just went around having a blast, just like what Deborah was talking about. That opportunity to get out and actually talk to people in a socially distanced manner after being stuck in our houses for so many months. I actually unexpectedly did drive for about 11 days. And in some ways it was pure bliss because I didn't have to worry about what anybody wanted to eat except myself. And just getting out and actually talking to people and seeing the excitement of first-time voters, seeing the excitement of 90-year-old women who, when they saw the RV, they were just dying to put their signature on it. We really highlighted the path to equality, that it's been long and hard, and it started way back when we were talking about the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, the 19th Amendment, the 24th, Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act. So it's long in coming, and the very next step is the 28th Amendment. And now we find ourselves, the RVG, I'm actually looking at her right out of the window here. I thought we were gonna put her in storage until January and go have a party in DC. However, Georgia. Right now, there are 4 Senate races that are not yet called. And so we're still waiting to see what will happen in Alaska, North Carolina, and in Georgia, we're off to a runoff. So we are now going to head back to Georgia. We're going to be looking really hard at, we've got 3 months of new 18-year-old voters that are now eligible to vote in the runoff that weren't eligible on November 5th. So anybody that turned 18 between that last registration deadline and January 5th is going to be somebody that we're going to target. We're getting registration tablets with their own data plans so that we can be registering voters easily online. We'll be texting, we'll be phone banking, we'll be postcarding, and doing a lot of peer-to-peer outreach. Whenever we talk to 50 people, if they each talk to 10, that's 500 people. So we've got a lot of pieces in place, and we're just going to go back and do what we already did better this time, because now we've learned some more things. We have new friends in Georgia. And so to all the other ERA Coalition lead orgs and partner orgs, thank you for all of your help in the North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia tour. But now we have to do it again in Georgia. So we'll be reaching out and working through drivers, budgets, organizers on the ground, and getting ready to do it again. And I would be remiss if I did not give a quick shout out to our partnership with Reclaim Our Vote and Center for Common Ground, who kind of by default, they're our fiscal sponsor, by default must be an ERA Coalition lead org. And so we definitely focused very heavily on working with community of color voters when we were down in Georgia. So we will be doing that again. And anyway, lots of fun to be had. Let me know if anybody wants to come have some fun.
Well, thank you so much, Katie. I may have to take you up on that offer. So I am now pleased to introduce another one of our lead orgs. President of our lead org, Feminist Majority, is Ellie Smil. Ellie Smil is here to talk about what they did and what they learned. I know they were focusing on college students and advocacy in a new way because so many colleges were not on campus. So it was virtual organizing. Ellie is a longtime champion of the ERA, which is almost an understatement. Ellie has helped lead this movement for over 40 years. And I know from working very closely with her that she is, I don't know how passionate she was before because I didn't know her then, but she is still one of the absolutely most passionate person that I know for this issue. She has been an activist leader in the passage of landmark legislation such as the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, the Equal Credit Act, the Civil Rights Restoration Act, the Violence Against Women Act, and Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. And Ellie, we can't wait to hear about what you did.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I'll try to go as fast as I can because there's a lot of ground to cover. Needless to say, we're overjoyed that Biden and Harris are about to be, I don't know, I hope today, go over the top, but that they are going over the top. And we will have great allies, in my opinion, in the White House and this administration. Oh, wow. Anyway, so we're all thrilled with that. But what did we do? We decided that one of the features we would work on would be flipping the Senate. And we actually worked in 12 states. We called our C3 vote, equality votes, our C3 campaign, and our C4 campaign, we didn't even give it a name. It was the backup to a Vote for Equality, which was, we formed a super PAC. And both Now and the Feminist Majority endorsed the super PAC and gave it resources. And then we also raised money outside of that. We decided to form a super PAC simply because we could raise more money in a faster way. And we wanted to take on quite a few states. So how it ended up is that we were active in 7 states through the super PAC called Vote for Equality. And we were active in 5 states with the equality votes. And everything we emphasized the need for the Equal Rights Amendment, the need for equality. And but of course, on the super PAC, we could endorse candidates, we could work for them. But the problem with the super PAC is you have to be independent of the campaign. So we were independent expenditure campaigns. We have not been able in this short period of time to analyze everything, but we are very happy. We were very active in Arizona, for example. In fact, our Arizona campaign was building on 6 years of having campaigns in Arizona because we had been dealing with independent expenditure campaigns within our C4. And this one now was without this, on the outside, but essentially it was the same type of mechanism. Although I will say we are now somewhat very, very knowledgeable about super PACs, and we would like to advise more feminist groups to form them because they're very powerful tools. Anyway, we were very active in targeting campuses. The feminist majority has specialized in targeting and encouraging students to vote now for quite a few years. And so we had been very active in Arizona, and we build upon that. And we're very happy. They just declared Mark Kelly the winner of the Senate race. We were active in states like Colorado as a C3, and we did it there around the abortion referendum. But we thought it was extremely important to be active in that race. By the way, we won that referendum, and that was great. And as you know, Hickenlooper also ran and won the Senate seat. And essentially getting out a youth vote helps the more progressive candidate. That is for sure. So we then we targeted very carefully, but it is a hard row. Right now, one of our targets, Cal Cunningham, North Carolina, is still in the race, although he's behind, but there's a possibility he can still win. I will say we had losses, and we're going to learn from them too. The biggest problem we had is that in the past, our campaigns had grassroots organizing. With the pandemic, we had to go almost 100% to, it wasn't 100%, we did do some ground organizing, but mainly through social media. And it was, it's good, but it is better if you have both the ground groups. It would be better without the pandemic. In fact, I think the pandemic was very, very hard to organize around, but we did. And what our whole thing is to get the students, as Deborah said, you want to make it cool. But we wanted to make them get them not only to vote, but to vote for equality, vote for the progressive candidate, et cetera. I can't go state by state, but what I can say is that this fight has not stopped. And we're now contemplating doing it in Georgia. We obviously have a chance now still to flip the Senate. We think that is imperative because basically, as you well know, Lindsey Graham and McConnell have stated very clearly they are not going to allow even hearings on the amendment. Now, maybe with a new president that will change, and obviously we have to have high hopes, but it would be better if the Democrats took control of the Senate. Then for sure we would get rid of this timeline, even though it doesn't have to, we don't have to get rid of it for the Supreme Court case. It would be better if we could. And so we're going to march on now to Georgia. One of the things that I wanted to say to all of us is I also think we should open up or start thinking about not only winning in 2011, but if we don't win in 2011, or if we do, I still think we should keep organizing for state equal rights amendments, grassroots organizing, changing these states. This race is far, I mean, we're overjoyed that Biden and Harris are winning, but it's too close. And we can't, there's so many states. It's hard to explain to anybody who's not an American that not only must you win the popular vote if you're a Democrat or who wants more progress, you got to deal with this electoral college. But not only that, we have so many of these state legislatures that are totally unrepresentative. Now, one of the things from all of our work, by the way, we've targeted North Carolina now for quite a few years, as we did Virginia for quite a few years before we flipped the House and Senate in Virginia. But basically, even with a reapportionment decision on our side, not a reapportionment, stop gerrymandering decision on our side. We picked up in North Carolina a very few seats because of even though it was an improvement, it was not really getting rid of gerrymandering totally. So in addition, we just got to finish the job in North Carolina. That winning 2 lawsuits there did make it so that we won 2 feminist women won for Congress, but we won very few seats in the state legislature. The good news, by the way, is that our side flipped the legislature in Arizona. So that's a state where we can ratify, and why not? It'd be better if we got beyond 38, but they now have both houses. And also it would be a state that we can build even upon the structure that is there. So basically, I think that we should start thinking about what states we should be organizing, changing. Where's the next ones? I do believe North Carolina should be on that list, and definitely Georgia should. I mean, that has shown us that we can take those 2 Senate seats. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And it's very doable. It's very doable now. So by the way, we still don't know where Alaska is either. So basically, there's much work to be done. And this was too close for a person who so corrupted this country and set us back as Mr. Trump has. But we won, and that's the only thing that counts. And basically, I think we got to keep our eyes on winning the court case, winning 2021. But I think the drive for equality should continue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Ellie. And thank you for all of your work. I'm now going to throw it back to Carol as she introduces Steve to talk about what's next.
Right. Great. We have, some more rock stars, Ellie and Katie, by the way. I mean, we spent so much time with them in Virginia. Bettina and I lived in Richmond for a while, working beside the excellent work that Katie and Ellie did, to get that 38th state. That was not an easy thing to do, but great. And thank you so much for being on and for your wise words, Ellie. It's an honor to work beside you. We know that this is the love of your life, and we just appreciate your wisdom and advice so much. Talking about rock stars, our next panelist, Steve Anderson, who is a member of our board of directors, we decided to kidnap him because he was so popular. He is a commissioner of human rights for the state of Illinois. He was appointed by the governor, J.B. Pritzker. He formerly served as a member of the Illinois House of Representatives, and during his last session in the Illinois House, which is where we all got to know Steve, Representative Anderson was the chief Republican sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment and successfully passed the amendment, making Illinois the 37th state to pass the ERA. So Steve, thanks so much for joining our board and for guiding us forward. A Republican, pro-life, a man, not the typical ERA board member or activist. So we're thrilled to have you. Steve.
Thank you so much. And yes, I am not the typical board member, but I'm very, very proud to play a supporting role in this incredible fight. I'm so inspired by all of the speakers today and so moved. It's odd for a Republican to be rooting for the Democratic nominee for president, but I have been for 4 years before I even knew who it was, and to flip the Senate blue, right? That's pretty odd, but I have one passion. My passion is the ERA. And I like to tell people why, because people will oftentimes say, well, why? Do you have a daughter or something? Well, I do, and she's wonderful. But I'm fighting for it for my son as much as my daughter. For both of them, the reality is we all do better when everyone is equal, when all the boats lift at the same time. When those boardrooms are no longer full of old white men who look like me, but instead are diverse and full of differing experiences and opinions, the ideas that can come out of that room are exponentially greater. So that's why I do it. And I'm proud to be that, to play that part. But today, I think we have to talk about some realities. And I'll be very honest with you. I suspect the Senate's not going to flip the way we want it to, and that makes me very sad. But there's a more important understanding and a realization that I think we all need to have. And that's that we need Republican buy-in on this. We have to get the hearts and minds of Republicans, like I was successfully able to do in Illinois, to say yes to the ERA. Honestly, we can't do it in a partisan way. It has to be bipartisan. I agree with the logic that we want to have a 50-state strategy. Even though we've got our 38, I want them all. Well, the ones that are largely left are all Republican controlled. So the only way we can do that is to get the hearts and minds, get the buy-in of my Republican colleagues. And I truly believe it can be done. But what we have to do is we have to confront two very real issues with that. The first is the abortion issue. We cannot shy away from it. We cannot pretend like it's not there, because it's there. And by the way, the rights arguments on it are lies. It's wrong. They are not connected. I want to be absolutely clear about that. I am pro-life. If they were connected, I wouldn't be here, but I am. They are not connected. We have to be able to explain why they're not connected. And we can do that, and we can do it in short order, but we have to be persuasive about that. And the other thing, and this is perhaps, they're both important, I'll be honest, but I think this is more important. We have to use what I call positive pressure on Republicans. Picture, if you will, a state senator or picture any legislator. You come into their office to talk about the ERA. What are they going to presume? One, you're a Democrat. Two, you want their vote. What are they going to get out of that? And we have to be real about politics. They want to know what they're going to get out of that. You're going to like their one vote, and then you're going to go vote for their opponent the next time around. And that's it. That does not encourage them to vote. So to vote for us, for our position. So if instead we can find what I call positive pressure, which means Republicans, men and women who buy into our cause, who will go into that room and will say, sir, ma'am, I'm a Republican. Maybe I'm a pro-life Republican, but I believe in you and I believe in the ERA. And when you vote for that and you take heat with your base, because you will, let's be honest, that person will, I'll be there for you. Positive pressure. I will be there. I'll walk with you. I'll knock doors. I'll donate money to you. I will be there for you. That's what we have to find. If we don't have that, we're never going to get the Republicans on board. We have to change that narrative. We have to confront the abortion issue, and we have to exert extreme positive pressure. So we got to find more people like me. And I'm doing that on my part, but I can't do it alone. I need your help. So hopefully that resonates and we can move forward in a very bipartisan manner. Because, and I'll say this last thing, even if we separate away from the ERA, let's talk about the legislative initiatives that are positive to women. If they're only voted on and passed by Democrats, every one of those initiatives is one cycle away from being repealed. One cycle away. We already saw that during the Trump administration. But instead, if they're passed bipartisanly, those are the bills that stick. Those are the laws that become permanent. And that's what we want. So I want to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity to speak with you. We got a lot of work to do, and I'm ready to do it. And I'm excited to be a part of this team. Thank you.
Steve, thanks so much, so much. You add so much to our conversations every single day. It is my pleasure now to introduce Shilpa Patke, is the Vice President of Women's Initiative at the Center for American Progress. She oversees American Progress's policy development and analysis, as well as its advocacy and outreach work on women's issues. Her work focuses on a wide range of women's issues, including women's economic security, women's health and rights, women's leadership, where she strives to ensure that women are at the center of the progressive policy agenda. Shilpa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for inviting me. It's good to see everyone, and excited to be here, which feels, we're really close. I think we're going to have, the day is hopefully only going to get better. And I don't know about you all, but I'm really practicing saying Madam Vice President. I'm trying to get that like to roll off my tongue, and just saying it out loud every time makes me feel happier. So that's been my mantra. A lot of folks have talked about sort of where we are. I'm going to just give a quick recap on the pieces that I think are important to note. So I think at the end of the day, Vice President Biden, or President-elect, will have won 5 states that Trump won in 2016. That's significant. And there are 2 states that Democrats have not won in decades, right? So let's see where things end up. But Georgia and Arizona would be significant wins for progressives. A huge popular vote. We've always talked about the 3 million difference with Hillary Clinton. I think we're looking, 5 million and up. That is significant. And the Senate is still to be determined, right? I don't think anyone would pretend, as Steve said, 2 special runoffs in January in Georgia, who would have predicted? But nothing is impossible. I think if that is what we have learned in our belief in Stacey Abrams and other Black women on the ground, anything is possible if we show up and we count every vote. So, I still tend to be positive about that. I think, a couple things I've been thinking about just as we think about what we might be able to build on in the future. We don't have to get, we don't have to go deep into it, but 2 things that I've been thinking about. One is, see this in Virginia, we'll see this in other places. We have to be really more precise on what we think about the Latinx vote and who the Latinx vote is and how we define Latina. I think moving forward, we have to be really precise about that and understand the distinct differences. We talk about the differences among women of color, but even within ethnic subgroups. And as we think about a multiracial plurality, we have to be really precise about who we're talking to in those audiences. I also think we have to redefine what it means to be suburban. Many of us have a sort of image of what a suburban voter is, but I think it's time we might dig a little deeper into that and try to really understand who we're speaking to. So where do we go from here? Let's see what happens in the Senate. But no matter what, there is a lot of harm that the Trump administration has done to women and families. There is a lot of work just to undo. Forget about the Build Back Better part, just straight up undoing of harm. There's a lot of work to do. And we will have the ability through an administration to move some executive actions rapidly. And there's a lot to do, whether it's on reproductive rights, equal pay, thinking about, how to reinterpret some of the work on COVID, the Department of Labor, workers' rights. There's a lot of space, I think, to build power quickly as we think about, how to gain protections. What does it mean to enforce the law that is on the land right now that exists? So I think there's a lot of work to do there. And I think we should celebrate those wins immediately and consider them in the sequencing as building power. 2, let's start focusing on what it really means to have a reflective democracy in the White House and the agencies. President Obama, others, made great strides on gender equity in some of these senior roles, but let's push for more. Biden has committed to this Council on Gender Equality Equity. Let's really push hard for that to be real, for it to be staffed appropriately. Let's push for women, not just, in the traditional cabinet roles at HHS or education. Let's push for women at Treasury, Justice, Defense, the big 4. Let's really think about State Department, right? We've never had a woman as the head of Defense or Treasury. Those are gains we should push for and demand. And then I think, let's see what happens in the House. I think it is very interesting to see this surge in Republican women. Seems like the party's learning a little bit about what they need to win. And maybe there's an opportunity there. I guess I would say, when I think about the issues we care about and work on, ERA, paycheck fairness, violence against women, pregnant workers fairness, these issues, it's not a question of if they will pass. It is simply a question now of when they will pass. And how long it's just going to take us to get that majority over the finish line. On both sides of the aisle, people speak to these issues. There are conservative, proposals on many. So to me, it's really not an issue of if, we got the if. To me, it's just sort of when. And I guess I would end on the fact that the Senate map in 2022 is favorable for Democrats. Let's see where we are and what we build on, but they will be lots of opportunities to talk about these issues and do accountability on both sides of the aisle. But there are many, Republicans, even moderate Republicans, that will be up in 2022, where we have the ability to make these prominent issues in those campaigns. So those are just, a couple thoughts, but I'm excited. I think there's a ton to build on here, and I think we've got a lot of work to do, and I'm excited to be with you.
And Shilpa, we're delighted to have you with us. Thank you so much for your great work. And we're 2021, and now you've given us the idea of the Senate race in 2022. So, and of course, here at the ERA Coalition, we are planning 5 and 10 years ahead. Not only the adoption of the ERA, but the implementation, and if we have to, the enforcement of it in the years ahead. So thanks so much. Linda Coberly is up next, and she serves as the chair of the ERA Coalition's legal task force. A lot of the legal thinking that went to our steps thus far, and then what we're going to be doing next, and how we make it through the courts and all of that. She heads up a huge office of Winston and Strawn in Chicago. I think sometimes, is it like 600 people, lawyers you have, you're in charge of?
600 people, 600
people.
Actually closer to 700 people, yes.
All right, 700 people, and the ERA. And the ERA Coalition. So she's chair of our legal task force. So I want to thank you so much. But by the way, just for information, she clerked for Justice Stephen Breyer and for Judge Douglas H. Ginsburg in the DC Circuit, among many other spectacular things in a legal career. And we only have to call her about 3 or 4 times a day, but she always picks up. So we're very, very glad about that. Linda.
Well, I'm thrilled to be with you and with this great panel, and I've loved listening to everyone's updates and reflections. It's been a very interesting week, and one of the things I can do today is to kind of share what I think the impact on the litigation may be. So while we are working to on the elections in Georgia, and I just visited Act Blue myself, and hope others do as well. While we're working on the campaigns in Georgia and continuing to find ways to reach out to those on the other side of the aisle to advocate for the ERA, both in the US Congress and in the state houses, the litigation continues. There are, as you know, 2 lawsuits pending right now. And I'll tell you briefly where each of them is. You may have seen earlier this fall that the Supreme Court denied immediate review in the Equal Means Equal case. So that case is now in the First Circuit Court of Appeals. The issue, as you may know, Equal Means Equal brought that case on its own behalf and on behalf of a Massachusetts resident and another advocacy group. The case is against the archivist. It asserts the same kinds of claims that are in the other lawsuit, which I'll talk about in a second. The district court dismissed that case for lack of jurisdiction, basically holding that the plaintiffs weren't the right plaintiffs to bring the kind of claim that they were asserting. That's the issue that will be decided now by the First Circuit Court of Appeals. I understand that the briefs in that case are due sometime in the next 2 months. So if you knew, if you were following that case at all and you saw that the Supreme Court denied review, that actually was not particularly a surprise, just because it's very, very unusual for the Supreme Court to accept review of any case that hasn't first gone through the courts of appeals. So essentially what the Supreme Court did is say that case will now go to the Court of Appeals, and that's the issue that will be before that court. I think again, the principal issue to be decided before that court is whether the plaintiffs were the right plaintiffs. In the litigation in Washington, D.C., again, against the archivist, that litigation, as you may know, was brought by the attorneys general of Virginia, Nevada, and my home state of Illinois. The all the issues have now been briefed in that case. There are briefs filed about the effectiveness of the time limit. There are briefs filed about whether states can rescind their ratification, as 5 states attempted to do in the 1970s. And as many of you know, there were some amicus briefs, quite a lot of amicus briefs submitted in the case as well. We are waiting for an oral argument in that case. I expect that the argument will take place virtually, and I don't know if it'll be Zoom or phone at this point, and we don't know when, but it could be as early as December, or it could be into next year. One kind of obvious question is, what is the impact of a change in the White House on that litigation? And I'd have to say, I'm not sure there will be a very dramatic impact. Certainly, it would be helpful to have a Biden administration and a Biden Department of Justice reconsider the legal opinion that was rendered by the Office of Legal Counsel under the Trump administration. And as you may know, that legal opinion said that the time limit is binding and effective and can't be removed retroactively. It would be, that position was already a reversal of a position that was earlier put out by the Justice Department a number of years ago. So what I'm sure we will be asking the Biden administration to do is to have the Justice Department reconsider that legal opinion. But I don't, even if the Justice Department did that, and even if the archivist actually changed its position, I think the litigation would continue. And that's because of the interveners. There are a number of red states that have intervened in the case to assert their own positions. They're the ones who actually focused most heavily in the papers on the rescission issue. And they are also kind of waiting in the wings to take over litigating the time limit issue. So I think even if the archivist were to now publish the amendment as part of the Constitution, that lawsuit would continue and probably the same issues will be decided by the court. What I hope is that at the same time that the litigation is moving forward, we're also pursuing the legislative strategies. There's no inconsistency at all between those two strategies. We can still urge the Senate to vote to remove the time limit. And in fact, some senators may choose to remove the time limit because they think it shouldn't be there in the first place, or because they think it's ineffective. So there isn't any inconsistency between asking the Senate to remove the time limit and arguing in court that the time limit is ineffective. And I'm sure the coalition and many others will be advocating for both of those avenues over the next several months. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you. So glad you're chair of our legal task force and part of our team. Throwing back to Bettina now. You should know that this Friday call is usually our lead organization call that we do every other week with many of our 115 organizations who are a member of the coalition. We're now starting to do them every single Friday, gearing up for the work that we have to do everywhere and seemingly in Georgia especially. But Bettina, back to you.
Great, thank you. So first, I'm going to call up Diane Post from Arizona. She's going to go over a little bit more detail on this state race. From what she's been chatting me, maybe it's not as positive as we're all hoping. Diane is from the ERA Task Force Arizona. She is an attorney whose career is focused on fighting one of the chief causes of poverty and injustice in the world, the inequality of women, with passion, creativity, and great effect. So, so over to you, Diane.
Yeah, thank you very much. I did check the numbers from the Secretary of State just before I came on, and we have delivered, Arizona delivered for the country. We did put in Mark Kelly, and Biden is ahead. He had lost a little bit overnight, but he's still ahead, and those who play with numbers say that it's going to hold. So we're hoping that's true. We still have about 200,000 votes to count. Most of them are in the Maricopa or the Phoenix urban area. Not all of them, but most of them. And our final day for curing ballots, which we're also doing, is November 10th at 5 o'clock. So not everything is in, so nothing is final, as we know for most people. So we did deliver on Biden and Kelly. We had hoped to get a seat in the House and we started winning, but now we're pretty much losing that, which is not good. And we did do fairly decently on the local and county level, but we did not do well on the state. We have not flipped either house. And I know the Democrats keep saying that, but it's not true. We lost one House seat in Yuma, and we gained a House seat in the Phoenix suburban area. So that left us even, and there we are. There are still 3 House seats that are too close to call, that are between 1,000 and 3,000 difference in the numbers. Unfortunately, 2 of them are from rural areas where they're pretty much done counting. So there's only the one that's still remaining in the urban area that has a lot of votes to count that could result in a switch. So it's possible, but it's not looking good. So that leaves us at 29-31 with the Republicans still in charge at 31. And that means 0. They won't even hear a bill. They won't even talk to us. That was what we had last 2 years, and they wouldn't even talk to us. In the Senate, we gained 1 seat. And now she's only ahead by about a little over 1,000 votes. We probably will hold that. She almost won last time, but so we've gained 1 seat, but that leaves us at 14-16. There are 2 seats still out that are possible, that are, again, 2,000 to 3,000 votes difference, and they're both in the urban area where the main number of votes remain to be counted. So it's possible, but it is not looking good for the state. And if the Republicans remain in charge of both houses, the ERA is dead for 2 more years here. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Diane. That was quite a sobering update.
Yeah.
I must say, Diane always has a way with words.
But, you know,
Delighted.
yeah, but it's good to hear. It's good to hear. I mean, because then if things end up differently, then it's actually even more exciting, kind of, as we've all seen throughout this terrible 4-day process of watching votes be counted. But yes, and unfortunately, if Arizona does not switch their seats, that means that the remaining 12 states are going to all have leadership that has not historically let the bills to come to a vote. And going back to what Steve said earlier, that is why it's so important that we work to make sure that we have supporters across the aisle. I know Melinda Hamilton is on from South Carolina. I don't know, Melinda, if you are able to give a brief update on the work that you've been doing. I know in South Carolina, this past session, legislative session in South Carolina, they did hold a hearing, a judiciary hearing, with the total of 4 women senators that are in the South Carolina State Senate, all supportive of the ERA, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and they in South Carolina have been working so hard to keep it bipartisan and have been fairly successful. So Melinda, are you on? Are you able to give an update? Can't see if she may not be able to give an update, but
okay, I just unmuted.
Okay, good. Thank you, Melinda.
But it looks like somehow I'm not. I need to fix the camera thing too. Okay, all right, here we go. Sure. I think in South Carolina, you know, the biggest problem we have is Lindsey Graham, and we are working against hundreds of years of tradition. And that tradition brings into play a lot of things that go very deep into our history. And it's not only about women. However, looking at the ERA, we, all 4 of our women senators have been reelected, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, but more importantly, Senator Tom Davis, who's a Republican, is again stepping up on this, and he is a respected leader in the Senate. We know that Gilda Cobb Hunter, who is a Democrat in the House, is going to reintroduce a resolution for ratification of the ERA. And we believe that we will have bipartisan support there. The only way we'll move this is bipartisan support. We will never flip either one, either our Senate or our House here. It's just not going to happen. But I do believe that we can bring people together if we have the right message and the right leadership. So, and I'm so grateful for the work that the Feminist Majority did here on Vote for Equality. We built some very good connections on campuses that bring the youth voice into this conversation, and that's going to be a huge help to us going forward. Is that what you need?
That's perfect, Melinda. That is perfect. So we actually have 10 minutes left in the session. I'm going to throw it back to Carol. Carol, if you wanted to take some Q&As or yourself have questions of anyone who's been speaking.
Well, I see that we have the chair of the Fund for Women's Equality, our sister organization. Mona, would you like to give us some thoughts, having listened to all of this?
Thank you, Carol. I think we're in an exciting place. As Carol said, we have our work cut out for us, and we are in the process of course, getting the ERA as our 28th Amendment to the Constitution, but also imagining what life in America could look like with a Democratic win in the White House, and imagining what living equality could be in our country. So we're hard at work doing that, and of course supporting the work of the ERA and this magnificent coalition. So I'm delighted to be here and pushing forward the work of our C3 organization.
Thank you. And Ron Baldwin, who is on our board and from the West Coast, would you like to say a few words? And also very engaged in the politics. What's your read on everything, Ron?
I don't really have much to add from what all the experts have said. I mean, we're all watching what's happening here. I think we know pretty much where this is going. I think the focus on the runoffs in Georgia in January is going to be very key in getting the control of the Senate and lifting the timeline there, getting SJ6 through. But beyond that, the effort that a lot of the people on this call put into organizing and getting out votes. I just want to thank everybody. I personally was working principally in Maricopa County with a persuasion campaign, digital persuasion campaign. Hopefully, we'll see that numbers are still coming in, but I think Arizona is going to be okay. Anyway, thank you, everybody.
Great, thanks, Ron. Any comments, questions? Kathy Spiller, I see you're still on. Would you like to share some of what you've been doing? Terrific work, by the way. It's the publisher and editor of Ms. Magazine. You're doing terrific. I love the fact that every single day now you're giving us so much content and so much information.
We're trying to keep everybody informed and ready to take action when it's needed. And of course, very, very hopeful that we can see some real progress going forward. And Ms. intends to be an information source for ideas and strategies. And so hope that all of you will consider contributing. We have a very big online presence. And as you heard, Michelle Goodwin is now hosting our podcast. So we intend to feature these issues of equality and opportunities with the Biden administration to really move forward. And we'll be working through Feminist Majority's work going forward as well, hopefully to balance the Senate out so that we have a real shot at some concrete progress, and look forward to working with all of you as we do that. Thanks, Carol, for your leadership, and Bettina, very excited to be part of all this. Thanks
so much, Kathy. I remember my last visit with you out in California, what a wonderful organizer and partner to have. Thank you so much. Anybody else on the call who would like to say something or ask a question? of those? I think everybody is sated with the ERA. Well, first of all, I want to thank our team. You met Bettina Hager, who was the very first employee of the ERA Coalition 6 years ago. And she did absolutely everything. And so I want to thank her. So much of the work on in the states and on Capitol Hill is her work. That election tool, electing equality. She and Amina, our intern from Howard University, did such hard work on that. So thanks for all of that, Bettina. Rachel Pfeffer, are you still there? Can we see you? Thank you to our new COO, who is getting us organized. That's a sign of a growing organization when you when you are really organized. So thank you, Rachel, for joining. And Catherine Geraldo, who is our Zoom mistress. Catherine, are you there? And who all has done. Thank you, Catherine. We have done 9 town halls this year and still doing them. We have a couple more coming up. Our town hall on November 16th will be the Equal Rights Amendment and the disability community. And then after that, we have on the 30th, the Equal Rights Amendment and Gen Z. And they're still trying to define for me exactly. They have a great staff. What is that? Who is in that bracket, as we're trying to keep up with, with the Equal Rights Amendment and how it applies to everyone. As we've said, we're 115 organizations. We would love to have any other organizations who want to come join us in this work. We would love to have your donation in terms of funds.
It's just a matter of degrees.
And
right?
that would be a big benefit for all of us. We have a lot of work to do. So we want to thank you so much for being with us. Please go to our website, eracoalition.org, for any information. Please sign up for our newsletter. We have our statement coming out as soon as the announcement is made about the new administration. We have our statement all ready to go. It will be wonderful to have a pro-ERA administration running the country, but we still have a great deal of work to do and a lot of persuading to do. So we're asking for action in the first 100 days from if it is in fact the Biden-Harris administration. So we thank you all so much for being with us, and we will see you at the next event. And thank you for all of your hard work.